Hello, and welcome back to another episode of WCSO News Video Podcast. My name is Sergeant Danny DiPietro, and I'll be your host today. As we all know, fraud cases happen year-round, and during this COVID-19 pandemic, nothing has changed. One thing that we have seen in the past is scamsters will tailor their fraud cases or their scams towards current trends, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Although we haven't seen a significant increase in COVID-19 scams within Washington County, we have seen them in the surrounding areas, so we anticipate them coming here soon. We have three special guests today that are going to, one, give us some tips and indicators on what to look for so we don't become victims, nor our family members, and also some advice on how we can move forward if we do become victims. Our first guest is going to be Detective Ben Ruhl. How you doing, Detective Ruhl?
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Do me a favor and tell everyone about yourself and how long you've been a detective.
I'm currently a detective with the Property Crimes Unit doing financial crimes. I've been with the Sheriff's Office since 1996 and been a detective for the last 13 years.
Perfect. What kind of scams should Washington County community members be aware of related to COVID-19?
Well, the main thing to remember is that we need to be aware of the same things that we've talked about before. With COVID-19, the situation is different because a lot of people are working from home and they're working with their home networks that might not be as secure. So there's some issues that everybody is scrambling to address for security. And then the big things for the rest of us to worry about are that there's a sense of urgency and there's a lot of fear circulating around. And with that, the targets of the COVID-19 frauds are going to be people that are the more highly susceptible people, the people working at home. And so this opportunity creates situations where we're going to see phishing scams and online dating scams and people trying to sell products, maybe solicit donations, all through the same avenues, but with the fear and the urgency that comes along with COVID-19.
So you mentioned a lot of scams there, which we've seen throughout our entire law enforcement career. What are some specific details when getting into those scams of what we can look for to not only protect ourselves, but also protect our family members?
Some of the same old adages, buyer beware, and I can't remember the other one that I was thinking of, but being aware of who you're talking to, making sure that you verify who it is you're sending information to, never sending money and gift cards or wire transfers to somebody you don't know and for purposes that you wouldn't have otherwise. Being suspicious of emails that come in that maybe have links to other sites, want you to click on things, give information. We have to be very careful because we all want to cure or we want to be safe, but most of those offers are going to not come true. It's important to get your information from reputable sources and let that guide you to where to look for the things you need and where to send your money.
Okay, so if it's too good to be true, it probably is a scam.
That's the one. You got
Okay,
it.
perfect. Next one. A lot of people are going to have to report these. They're going to become victims, unfortunately, but we need to know about them. What's the easiest way for community members to go ahead and report the incident that they've fallen victim to?
You know, the best thing to do is call the sheriff's office, talk to your local law enforcement, and if it's something that needs to go somewhere else, we'll get you the information you need. We'll give you ways to contact other agencies or look into reporting and checking your credit, all that stuff. We have a lot of resources available to you.
Perfect. And they can get a hold of us and any other law enforcement agency where their jurisdiction is through non-emergency dispatch. We're going to put that phone number on the bottom of the screen. So if you do need to file a report, you'll have that information. So thank you, Detective Ruhl, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the next person we're going to bring on is Corrine Hanning. Corrine Hanning works for the Sheriff's Office, and she's in our eldersafe position. Hi, Corrine. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Danny?
Doing well. Hey, a lot of people might not understand your position at the Sheriff's Office as eldersafe. Can you kind of explain what it is you do and who you help?
Sure, I'm happy to. ElderSafe is a county-wide program that works with older adults to provide information and outreach on the prevention side on topics such as avoiding scams and identity theft, as well as general personal safety or elder abuse awareness. Through presentations and events similar to this one, as well as providing crime victim services. And I work with a team of stellar volunteers who help to provide follow-up calls to people 65 and over who have put out calls for service through their local law enforcement countywide, or filed a police report to check up and see how they're doing, offer a listening ear, and help connect them to community services and resources relevant to their situation.
So recently you and I were talking and you kind of implemented a new program called Scamdemic, I believe is what it's called. Can you tell everybody what that's about and who that helps out?
Sure. So as Detective Ruhl was mentioning, even before the COVID-19 crisis, we were all being hit with a barrage of calls on our cell phones, phishing emails, etc. So although in many ways it feels like life has come to a halt in the last 6 or 7 weeks since the shelter at home order was put into place, as you've mentioned, scammers haven't stopped, but they've pivoted their methods to prey upon our community's greatest fears right now. So Scamdemic is a presentation that I've developed that covers much of what we're hitting on here today, but it goes into a little more detail kind of as to how we got here, and a little more detail on some of the common COVID scams that are being reported nationwide right now. Excuse me. So there will be in the comments section, there will be a place where we put some contact information if anyone would like to reach out and schedule a Scamdemic webinar, to schedule with me and any group that you would like to coordinate that with.
Okay. Now, Detective Ruhl was just talking about how if there becomes a victim, that victim's going to report the crime to the sheriff's office. And then after that, if we can go ahead and find the suspect, get an arrest, they're going to go to the district attorney's office and go for prosecution. During this whole process, where do you, as an elder safe coordinator, where do you fit in?
Sure, that's a great question. It kind of depends. Sometimes it can be even before it has been reported. Sometimes people reach out to me to kind of help triage a situation and look for, describe what's going on and say, what do I do next? And, I'll listen and say, I think we need to call the non-emergency number and get that reported right away. Or I might say, that seems like it falls a little more in the purview of adult protective services. So let's go that route first. And I'll kind of along the way help connect them to different community resources that are available depending on the specifics of their situation. In other cases, there have been times that Detective Ruhl himself has reached out to me to sort of help shepherd a person along through the process, because kind of in that interim, before a case is prosecuted, thankfully the district attorney's office has their own victim advocates as well that do a lot of the same work. But just, helping a person to see and realize that they're not alone and that there are people at the sheriff's office, our staff are amazing and just really care about making sure that older adults and the most vulnerable adults in our community know that they are seen and they are cared for. That was one other thing I was going to say about that. Just that there are, sometimes, so I'll get referrals from, either deputies or other law enforcement officers throughout the county to help get people connected. I think of my position kind of like a hybrid social service position that's housed within law enforcement. So it's easier to kind of make that warm handoff when there's either a deputy or an officer that sees someone has a little more need than what they are able to have time to provide for them. They can connect them to me and then I can help get them plugged into where they need to be.
Well, thank you. We appreciate talking to you and hearing about your position at the sheriff's office. So next, we're going to go ahead and go talk to Allison Brown. Senior Deputy District Attorney Allison Brown has worked for the Sheriff's Office for quite a while, and here she is. How are you, Allison?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Can you tell us about yourself? How long you've been at the District Attorney's Office?
Yeah, I've been with the Washington County District Attorney's Office since 2007, and I've been a DA now for 15 years.
We've heard about the Sheriff's Office kind of some new times with COVID-19. Tell us, how is the DA's office handling this whole pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we want the community to know that we are still up and running. We are available 24/7. We're still handling cases. The cases that we're primarily focusing on right now in terms of actually going to court are cases where defendants are in custody or otherwise there's a real public safety concern, but we're still available to help inform anyone who needs help investigating a case, and we're available as needed.
It's awesome. So one of the groups that you're part of is Vulnerable Adults Multidisciplinary Team. It's a mouthful. Right. Can you explain what that team is and how you fit in?
Yeah. So we've got a group of professionals that are dedicated to protecting vulnerable adults and hoping to address or prevent abuse that happens in Washington County. So we've got a very large group from law enforcement, prosecutors, victim services, DHS, and we meet regularly to talk about cases and talk about ways to help these victims. So it's a great team. We've also got a team in the DA's office that specifically, prosecutors that specifically handle these cases as well.
Okay. So as you know, we've been talking about scams a lot today, and obviously some elder abuse issues. If you can help us from the DA side, what are some of the tips or the red flags to indicate other forms of abuse or exploitation that a victim may see?
Right.
Or a family member, to be more specific.
Right. So vulnerable adults are going to be adults with disabilities, right, or the elderly, and they are already in a vulnerable position because of that. So some of the classic red flags that we see are these individuals being isolated, being withdrawn maybe from family members, having a change in behavior, or strangers that are all of a sudden befriended them. So those are classic red flags and warning signs. In terms of the types of abuse that we see, they are primarily, we see financial, but we also see physical and neglect. So for physical, unexplained injuries, and perhaps for financial changes in their finances, someone gaining control over their finances or over transactions. And then we see for neglect, someone living with unsafe or unsanitary living conditions, not getting to the treatment that they need, and not getting the help that they need. So those are the kind of the classic red flags or warning signs we would see. The real concern we have right now is because of the COVID crisis, these vulnerable adults are even more isolated. So that red flag is forced upon individuals, unfortunately. So they're not able to get the help they need, and perhaps they are with the abuser and they can't get help. So that's a real concern to us. They typically won't even recognize that they are a victim. And so often a lot of the reports we get on these cases are from an outsider, right? A family member or a coworker or a neighbor. But right now, because of the isolation, we're not hearing about any potential abuse that's occurring.
Gotcha. And so you kind of touched on a little bit there where the signs of what to look for. But what I wanted to ask you now is moving on. We have seen a trend within Washington County where the reports of not only elder abuse but child abuse have gone down. Do we believe that the amount of cases are actually going down, or is there something that is showing this statistic that could be skewing the stats?
Right. So vulnerable adults cases and domestic violence and child abuse all have that element where they occur in isolation, often behind closed doors. And so as we're seeing fewer reports of child abuse right now, we're also seeing fewer reports of vulnerable adult abuse. And that doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means that we're not getting the information. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, these people aren't in a position where they can maybe make a report or get help. And they're not interacting with other people because they're isolated. So other people aren't there to report any abuse that's going on. So that's really concerning to us.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And if there's anything we need, we're going to come ask.
Sounds good. We're here for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's the end of our podcast today. One thing I want to touch on is we all understand that there's going to be victims of scams, frauds, whatever it is, but please look out for not only yourself, look out for your family members. We want to make sure that, number one, that you don't become a victim, but if you do, we want to be able to help you here at the Sheriff's Office, the DA's office, whatever it is we can do, we're going to be able to reach out, but we need to be in contact with you. So please report it to us, look at the links below of other ways or other information, how you can prevent yourself from becoming a victim, or at least help yourself if you do become a victim. So once again, thank you. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. We have plenty of other podcasts that we've put out here in the past, and we want to make sure you are able to see those. So if you hit subscribe, you'll be able to go to our page and see all the videos that we have created. So once again, we appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Please stay safe.